The rain stung my face like 1,000 tiny needles, but I didn't care. I ran. My boots slapped against the wet pavement of Crestwood's back alleys, heart pounding louder than the thunder overhead. Behind me, the wail of sirens promised trouble I couldn't outrun forever, but I'd be damned if I didn't try. My name is Elena Marquez, and at 28, I'd learned the hard way that trust was a luxury I couldn't afford. Crestwood, a sleepy town in upstate New York, wasn't supposed to be where my life unraveled. I'd come here 2 years ago, chasing a fresh start after a childhood of foster homes and a string of bad choices. But tonight those choices had caught up. The backpack slung over my shoulder held everything I owned, and a stolen necklace that could send me to jail. I ducked into an alley, my breath ragged, and pressed myself against the cold brick wall. The sirens grew louder, then stopped. Too close. I clutched the backpack tighter, cursing myself for thinking I could pull off one last job. The necklace, a gaudy thing studded with emeralds, was supposed to be my ticket out of debt, out of Crestwood, out of this life. But now red and blue lights flickered at the alley's entrance, and I knew I was trapped. "Elena Marquez," a voice called, sharp but steady. "I know you're there. Come out with your hands up." My stomach dropped. I'd heard that voice before, calm, authoritative, with a hint of something softer I couldn't place. I peeked around the corner and saw her. Officer Riley Harper, standing in the rain, her blonde hair plastered to her forehead under her cap. She was 30, maybe, with blue eyes that cut through the storm like a lighthouse beam. I'd seen her around town, always polite but distant, the kind of cop who seemed to see more than she let on. Now those eyes were locked on the shadows where I hid. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," she said, her voice softer now, almost pleading. Could have run. I'd done it before, slipped through cracks, vanished into the night. But something in her tone stopped me. Maybe it was the way she said my name, like she knew more than just my rap sheet. Or maybe I was just tired of running. I stepped out, hands raised, rain soaking through my jacket. "All right," I said, voice shaking. "You got me." Riley's flashlight beam hit me, and I squinted against it. She lowered it slightly, her expression unreadable. "Pretty girl like you shouldn't be out here pulling stunts like this," she said, almost to herself. Her words caught me off guard. A spark of warmth in the cold night. Pretty girl. Nobody had called me that in years, not since Mom died when I was 12. "What's it to you?" I snapped, defiance masking the flutter in my chest. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stepped closer, her boots splashing in puddles. "Drop the bag, Elena." I hesitated, then let the backpack slide to the ground. The necklace was inside, wrapped in a scarf, but I wasn't fooling anyone. She knew what I'd done. Breaking into that pawn shop wasn't exactly subtle. The owner had tripped the alarm before I could get out clean. Riley glanced at the bag, then back at me. "You've got 2 choices, she said, her voice low, like she was sharing a secret. "I cuff you now, take you in, and you face the consequences. Or," she paused, her eyes searching mine, "you come with me and we talk. Just you and me. No station, no report." "Not yet." I blinked, rain dripping into my eyes. "Why the hell would you do that?" She didn't answer, just held my gaze. Those blue eyes weren't cold or judgmental, they were something else entirely, something that made my pulse race for reasons I didn't want to name. I should have said no. I should have let her arrest me. But instead I nodded. "Okay," I whispered. "Let's talk." Riley gestured toward her cruiser, parked just outside the alley. I followed, every step feeling like a gamble. She opened the passenger door, not the back, where I expected to be thrown, and I slid inside, the scent of leather and coffee filling my senses. She got in the driver's seat, started the car, and pulled away from the alley without a word. We drove in silence through Crestwood's empty streets, the rain blurring the world outside. My mind raced. Was this a trick? A trap? But every time I glanced at Riley, her hand steady on the wheel, I saw something that didn't add up. She wasn't just a cop doing her job. There was a story behind those eyes, one I wanted to know despite myself. "Where are we going?" I finally asked, my voice barely above the hum of the engine. "Somewhere quiet," she said. "You'll see." The cruiser pulled into a diner on the edge of town, its neon sign flickering in the storm. Mabel's Place, it read, the kind of spot where truckers and insomniacs nurse coffee at 2 a.m. Riley parked and turned to me. "You hungry?" I laughed, a bitter sound. You're buying dinner for a thief? Tonight, I'm buying dinner for Elena, she said. And the way she said my name made my heart stutter. Come on. Inside, the diner was warm, smelling of grease and pie. We slid into a booth, and Riley ordered coffee and pancakes for both of us. I sat across from her, my hands fidgeting, waiting for the catch. But she just watched me, her expression soft, like she was trying to figure me out. Why are you doing this? I asked, leaning forward. You could have booked me back there. Why the special treatment? Riley stirred her coffee, her eyes on the steam rising from the cup. Because I've seen your file, Elena. I know you're not just a thief. And I know what it's like to feel like you're out of options. Her words hit harder than I expected. I wanted to argue, to tell her she didn't know me, but the truth was she was right. I'd been scraping by for years, taking risks to survive, always one step ahead of ruin. And now, sitting across from this woman who should have been my enemy, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. Tell me something, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Why the necklace? What's it for? I swallowed, my throat tight. It's not about the money, I said, though that was half true. It's about getting out. Starting over. Somewhere I'm not. This. I gestured at myself, at the damp clothes and the weight of my choices. Riley nodded like she understood. And where's that somewhere? I didn't have an answer. Not yet. But as the pancakes arrived and we started talking, really talking, I felt something shift. This wasn't just a cop and a criminal. This was two people, both carrying their own scars, finding each other in the middle of a storm. By the time we finished, the rain had slowed, and the diner was nearly empty. Riley paid the bill and we stepped outside, the air cool and heavy with possibility. She turned to me, her face half lit by the neon sign. I meant what I said about choices, Elena. You don't have to keep running. I looked at her, my heart pounding. And if I don't? What happens then? She smiled, a small sad thing that made my chest ache. That's up to you, pretty girl. The words hung between us, heavy as the damp night air. Riley's smile faded, and for a moment we just stood there, the neon glow of Mabel's place casting shadows across her face. I wanted to ask what she meant, to demand answers, but my voice caught in my throat. Let's get you home, she said finally, nodding toward the cruiser. It's late. Home. The word felt foreign. My apartment was a one-room dump above a laundromat, barely a step up from the streets I'd known as a kid. But I nodded, sliding back into the passenger seat. The drive was quiet, the only sound the soft patter of rain and the occasional crackle of Riley's radio. I stole glances at her, trying to piece together who she was. A cop who took thieves to diners instead of jail wasn't just breaking protocol, she was breaking something else, something personal. We pulled up to my building, a crumbling brick structure on Crestwood's east side. The street lamp flickered, casting a sickly yellow glow. I reached for the door handle, but Riley's voice stopped me. Elena, wait. I turned, my heart doing that stupid flutter again. She leaned forward, her hand still on the wheel, like she was anchoring herself. I need you to know something, she said. I'm not doing this to trick you. I see something in you. Something worth saving. Her words hit like a punch. Nobody had ever said anything like that to men at foster parents, not caseworkers, not even the few people I'd let get close. I wanted to believe her, but trust was a jagged edge, and I'd been cut too many times. Why do you care? I asked, my voice sharper than I meant. You don't know me. Riley's eyes softened, but there was a flicker of something else, pain maybe. I know enough, she said. I've seen people like you before. People who get caught in a cycle they didn't choose. I've been there too, in my own way. I frowned, curiosity overriding my defenses. What's that supposed to mean? She hesitated, then let out a small laugh like she'd been caught. Let's just say I didn't always fit in either. Growing up in a small town like this, being different. It's not easy. Different. The word landed like a stone in my chest. I'd heard it before, whispered about me in schoolyards and group homes. I'd known I was a lesbian since I was 15, but I'd buried it deep, too busy surviving to let myself feel anything real. Was she saying what I thought she was? Before I could ask, she straightened, slipping back into cop mode. Get some sleep, Elena. We'll talk tomorrow. I'll swing by around noon. Tomorrow. I echoed, my mind spinning. What, you're my babysitter now? She smirked, a spark of mischief in her eyes. Something like that. Just don't skip town, alright? I'd hate to chase you again. I rolled my eyes but couldn't hide my smile. No promises. I climbed out of the cruiser, the weight of the night settling over me. As I trudged up the creaky stairs to my apartment, I replayed her words. Something worth saving. For the first time in years, I let myself wonder if she might be right. The next day, true to her word, Riley showed up at noon. I was in the middle of eating cereal out of a cracked bowl when I heard the knock. My heart jumped. Nobody knocked on my door unless it was the landlord or trouble. I opened it to find Riley, out of uniform, in a flannel shirt and jeans. She looked normal, human. Her blonde hair was loose, framing her face, and those blue eyes were just as intense as the night before. "Ready to talk?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. I gestured at the mess of my apartment-stained carpet, a sagging couch, a single light bulb flickering overhead. "Welcome to my palace. Not much to talk about here." She stepped inside, unfazed by the chaos. "Doesn't matter where we are," she said. "Just matters what you do next." We sat on the couch and she laid it out. The necklace, the pawn shop, the charges I could face. But she wasn't threatening. Mesh was offering a way out. "Return it," she said. "No questions asked. I'll make sure it gets back to the owner. You walk away clean." I laughed, a bitter edge to it. "Clean? You think that fixes everything? I owe people, Riley. People who don't take apologies." Her jaw tightened. "Who do you owe?" I didn't want to tell her. The less she knew about my debts to Frankie, a local loan shark with a mean streak, the better. But her eyes held mine, steady and unrelenting, and I found myself spilling it all: the money I'd borrowed to cover rent, the jobs I'd taken to pay him back, the necklace that was supposed to settle the score. Riley listened, her face unreadable. When I finished, she leaned forward, her voice low. "You don't have to do this alone, Elena. I can help." "Why?" I demanded, my voice breaking. "Why risk your job for someone like me?" She looked away, her fingers tracing the edge of the couch. "Because I know what it's like to feel like you're drowning," she said. "And because I see you. Not just the file, not just the mistakes. You." Her words cracked something open inside me. I wanted to push her away, to tell her she was wasting her time, but instead I felt my hand reach for hers. Our fingers brushed, and for a moment the world stopped. Her skin was warm, her touch grounding, and I realized I didn't want her to let go. "Riley," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "What are we doing here?" She didn't pull away. Instead, she looked at me, her eyes searching. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I want to find out." The air between us felt electric, charged with something neither of us could name. I leaned closer, drawn to her like gravity, but a sharp knock on the door shattered the moment. I froze, my heart racing. Nobody knocked like that unless they meant business. "Elena," a voice bellowed. "Frankie, open the damn door." Riley's eyes narrowed, her hand instinctively moving to her side, where her gun would have been if she were in uniform. "Stay here," she whispered, standing. "No way," I hissed, grabbing her arm. "You don't know what he's capable of." But Riley wasn't listening. She moved toward the door, her posture all business, and I knew this was about to get messy. Riley's hand hovered near the door, her body tense, like a coil ready to spring. I grabbed her wrist, my fingers digging into her skin. "Don't," I whispered, panic clawing at my chest. "Frankie's not someone you mess with." Her blue eyes flicked to mine, steady but fierce. "I'm not letting him hurt you, Elena," she said, her voice low and unyielding. Before I could argue, she pulled free and opened the door. Frankie stood there, all 6 feet of him, his leather jacket slick with rain and his eyes cold as steel. He was in his late 30s, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow that made him look like he'd fought the devil and won. Behind him, 2 of his goons loomed, their hands stuffed in their pockets like they were itching for a fight. Well, Frankie drawled, his gaze sliding past Riley to me. "Hiding behind a cop now, Elena? That's new." Riley stepped forward, blocking his view. "She's not hiding," she said, her voice calm but edged with steel. "What do you want?" Frankie's smirk widened, but his eyes stayed hard. "What I want is my money. Elena owes me 10 grand, and I'm done waiting." He tilted his head, sizing Riley up. "You her girlfriend or something?" My face burned, but Riley didn't flinch. I'm someone who doesn't like bullies, she said. And you're on private property. Leave. Frankie laughed, a low, ugly sound. You think a batch scares me? I know every cop in this town, sweetheart. You're out of your depth. I stepped forward, my heart pounding. I'll get your money, Frankie, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Just give me a few days. He sneered, stepping closer. You've had enough days. That necklace was supposed to square us. Where is it? I glanced at Riley, my stomach twisting. The necklace was still in my backpack, hidden under the couch. If Frankie found it, he'd take it and still come after me. If he didn't, he'd make sure I paid in other ways. Riley's hand brushed mine, a subtle signal to stay calm. You're not getting anything tonight, she told Frankie. Walk away, or I call for backup. Frankie's eyes narrowed, but before he could respond, one of his goons shifted, his hand slipping out of his pocket to reveal a glint of metal. My breath caught. Riley saw it too, her body tensed, but she didn't back down. Last chance, she said, her voice deadly quiet. Frankie stared her down, then chuckled, raising his hands in mock surrender. All right, officer. We'll go. But Elena. His eyes locked on mine, cold and promising. You don't get to run from this. He turned and sauntered off, his goons following. The door clicked shut, and I let out a shaky breath, my legs suddenly weak. Riley turned to me, her face pale but composed. You okay? No, I snapped, anger and fear colliding. What the hell was that? You could have gotten us both killed. I wasn't going to let him touch you, she said, her voice fierce. Not now, not ever. Her words stopped me cold. I wanted to yell, to push her away, but the look in her eyes, protective, raw, unguarded, made my chest ache. I sank onto the couch, my hands shaking. You don't get it, Riley. Frankie doesn't stop. He'll come back. Then we deal with him, she said, sitting beside me. Together. I looked at her, my defenses crumbling. Why are you doing this? You could walk away, keep your hands clean. Why risk everything for me? Riley's gaze softened and she reached for my hand, her fingers warm against mine. Because I've spent my whole life playing it safe, she said. Hiding who I am, what I feel. I'm done with that. And when I look at you, Elena, I see someone worth fighting for. My breath hitched. I'd spent years building walls, keeping everyone out, but Riley was tearing them down with every word, every touch. I leaned closer, our faces inches apart, and for a moment, I let myself imagine what it would be like to let her in, to let myself feel. But reality crashed back. You don't know what you're signing up for, I said, pulling back. Frankie's just the start. My life's a mess, Riley. Then let me help you clean it up, she said, her voice steady. Starting with the necklace. I hesitated, then reached under the couch, pulling out the backpack. I unzipped it and handed her the scarf-wrapped necklace. She unwrapped it, the emeralds glinting in the dim light. This is it, she asked. I nodded. It's worth enough to get Frankie off my back. But if I give it to him, he'll just keep coming. Riley's jaw tightened. Then we don't give it to him. We return it to the pawn shop, like I said. I'll handle the owner, make sure they don't press charges. But you need to trust me, Elena. Trust. That word again. I looked into her eyes, searching for a reason to say no, but all I saw was her steady, real, and impossibly brave. Okay, I said finally. I trust you. The next morning we drove to the pawn shop. My stomach was in knots, but Riley's presence beside me kept me grounded. The owner, a grizzled man named Carl, eyed us warily as Riley handed over the necklace. She explained it was found, no questions asked, and Carl, after some grumbling, agreed not to press charges. I stood there waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it didn't. For the first time in years I felt a sliver of hope. But hope was dangerous. As we left the shop, Riley's radio crackled with a calla disturbance at the edge of town. Her face tightened. That's near Frankie's territory, she said. I need to check it out. I'm coming with you, I said, my voice firm. Elena, no. I'm not letting you face him alone, I cut in. You said we're in this together, right? She looked at me, a mix of frustration and something softer in her eyes. Fine, she said. But stay close. We drove to a rundown warehouse district, the kind of place where deals went bad and bodies got lost. As we pulled up, I saw Frankie's car parked outside a warehouse, its doors wide open. My heart sank. Whatever was happening, it wasn't good. Riley parked and turned to me. "Whatever happens in there, you stay behind me. Got it?" I nodded, but as we stepped out into the cold morning air, I knew nothing would go as planned. The warehouse loomed like a beast in the gray morning light, its rusted walls and broken windows screaming trouble. Riley's hand brushed mine as we approached, a silent reminder to stay close. My pulse thundered, but her steady presence kept me from bolting. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of oil and dust. Dim light filtered through cracked skylights, illuminating a group of figures near the center. Frankie stood among them, his voice low and menacing as he barked orders at his goons. Crates were stacked around them, some pried open, revealing glints of metal weapons, maybe, or something worse. My stomach twisted. This wasn't just about my debt anymore. Riley's hand went to her radio, but she didn't call for backup. "Not yet. Stay here," she whispered, her eyes locked on Frankie's crew. "I need to get closer." "No way," I hissed, grabbing her arm. "You're not going in there alone." She shot me a look, half exasperation, half admiration. "Elena, I'm trained for this." "You're not." "And I know Frankie," I countered. "You need me." She hesitated, then nodded. "Fine. But if things go south, you run. Promise me." I didn't answer, just followed her as we crept along the shadows of the warehouse, using the crates for cover. My heart pounded so loud I was sure Frankie would hear it. We stopped behind a stack of boxes, close enough to hear his voice clearly now. "Move it faster," Frankie snapped at one of his men. "The buyer's coming tonight, and I'm not losing this deal because you idiots can't pack a crate." Riley's eyes narrowed. "He's moving something big," she whispered. "This isn't just about you anymore." I nodded, my mind racing. If Frankie was dealing in something illegal, drugs, guns, whatever, it explained why he was so desperate for cash. My debt was just a drop in his bucket, but knowing that didn't make me feel any safer. Riley pulled out her phone, typing a quick message backup, I assumed. But before she could hit send, a goon rounded the corner, spotting us. "Hey!" he shouted, drawing a gun. Time slowed. Riley shoved me behind her, her own weapon drawn in a flash. "Police! Drop it!" she barked, her voice cutting through the chaos. The goon hesitated, but Frankie's voice rang out. "Well, look who's back," he said, striding toward us with a smirk. "Officer Harper and her little thief. You two just don't know when to quit." Riley didn't lower her gun. "Step back, Frankie," she said. "This ends now." He laughed, spreading his arms. "You think you can take me down? You're one cop, Harper. And you're out of your jurisdiction." I saw the flicker of doubt in Riley's eyes, but she stood her ground. "Backup's on the way," she said. "You're done." Frankie's smirk faded, and for a moment I thought he'd back off. But then he nodded at his goons and everything went to hell. One lunged at Riley, knocking her gun aside. I screamed her name, diving forward without thinking. My fist connected with the goon's jaw, pain shooting up my arm, but he staggered back. Riley recovered, tackling another goon to the ground. I scrambled for her gun, my hands shaking as I grabbed it. "Frankie, stop!" I shouted, pointing the weapon at him. He froze, his eyes narrowing. "You're not gonna shoot me, Elena," he said, but his voice wavered. "Try me," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at me. I didn't want to shoot, but I'd do whatever it took to protect Riley. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Frankie's face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," he spat, then bolted toward a side exit, his goons scrambling after him. Riley grabbed my arm, pulling me back. "Let him go," she said, her breath ragged. "We've got enough." Backup arrived minutes later, flooding the warehouse with lights and shouts. Riley explained the situation, her voice calm but firm, while I stood there, still clutching her gun like a lifeline. The cops found crates of illegal weapons enough to put Frankie away for years if they caught him. When it was over, Riley led me outside, away from the chaos. We sat on the hood of her cruiser, the morning air cold against my skin. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded, though I was anything but. "You could have died in there," I said, my voice breaking. "Because of me." "No," she said, turning to face me. "Because of him. And because I chose to be here. With you." Her words hit me harder than Frankie's threats. I looked at her, really looked at her, the way her eyes held mine, the way her hand rested close to mine on the hood. Without thinking, I leaned in and she met me halfway. Our lips brushed, soft and tentative, then deeper, like we'd both been starving for this. The kiss was fire and rain, fear and hope, everything we hadn't said. When we pulled apart, her forehead rested against mine. "Elena," she whispered, "I don't know where this is going, but I want it. I want you." My heart ached, torn between joy and fear. "I'm a mess, Riley," I said. "You deserve better." She smiled, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "Let me decide that." The next few days were a blur. Frankie was still out there, but the police were closing in. Riley stayed close, checking on me, bringing coffee, making me laugh despite everything. We talked about our lives, her growing up as the only out lesbian in a conservative town, me bouncing between foster homes, never quite belonging. Each conversation pulled us closer, like threads weaving us together. But Frankie wasn't done. One night, as I locked up my apartment, I found a note slipped under the door. "You can't hide forever, pretty girl." My blood ran cold. He'd used Riley's words, twisting them into a threat. I called Riley, my hands shaking as I told her about the note. She was at my place in minutes, her face grim. "We're ending this," she said. "No more running." She took me to the station, where she and her captain devised a plan to lure Frankie out. I was the bite, a risky move, but I was done being afraid. The next night I stood in an empty parking lot, wired up with a mic, while Riley and her team waited in the shadows. When Frankie showed up, his eyes gleamed with malice. "You thought you could screw me over?" he snarled, stepping closer. I held my ground, my voice steady. "It's over, Frankie. You're done." Before he could respond, Riley's voice cut through the night. "Police! Hands up!" Frankie spun, but he was too late. The team moved in, cuffing him and his goons. As they dragged him away, he glared at me, but I didn't flinch. For the first time, I felt free. The parking lot was quiet now, the flashing lights of the police cruisers fading as they hauled Frankie away. I stood there, the mic still taped to my chest, my breath visible in the cold night air. Riley approached, her face a mix of relief and exhaustion. She pulled the mic off me gently, her fingers brushing my skin, and I shivered, not from the cold, but from her touch. "You did it," she said, her voice soft but proud. "You faced him." "We did it," I corrected, meeting her eyes. "I couldn't have done this without you." She smiled, that small, sad smile that always made my heart ache. "Come on," she said. "Let's get you home." Back at my apartment, the weight of the night settled over us. Riley sat on my couch, her flannel shirt wrinkled, her blonde hair a mess from the chaos. I handed her a cup of coffee, and we sat in silence for a moment, the kind of silence that felt full, not empty. "Frankie's gone," she said finally. "The evidence from the warehouse is enough to keep him locked up for a long time. You're free, Elena." Free. The word felt too big, too fragile. I'd spent so long running from my past, from myself, that I didn't know what freedom looked like. But sitting here with Riley's steady presence beside me, I started to believe it was possible. "I don't know what comes next," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "I've never had this, a chance to start over." Riley set her coffee down and turned to me, her blue eyes searching mine. "You don't have to figure it out alone," she said. "I meant what I said that night at the diner. I see you, Elena. All of you. And I'm not going anywhere." Her words broke something open inside me, something I'd kept locked away for years. I'd always thought love was a luxury, something for people who didn't have to fight to survive. But Riley wasn't offering a fairy tale, she was offering something real, something I could hold on to. I reached for her hand, my fingers intertwining with hers. "You're crazy, you know that?" I said, a shaky laugh escaping me. "Risking everything for someone like me." She leaned closer, her breath warm against my cheek. "You're worth it," she whispered. This time when I kissed her, it wasn't desperate or fleeting. It was slow, deliberate, a promise we were both making. Her lips were soft, her hands steady as they cupped my face, and for the first time, I let myself believe I could be more than my mistakes. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind. With Frankie behind bars, Crestwood felt different, lighter, like I could breathe again. I got a job at a local bookstore, a small step toward rebuilding my life. It wasn't much, but it was honest, and every paycheck felt like a victory. Riley was there through it all, cheering me on, showing up with coffee or a bad joke when I needed it most. One evening we walked through Crestwoods Park, the leaves turning gold in the autumn light. Riley's hand was warm in mine, and for once I wasn't looking over my shoulder. "You ever think about leaving this place?" she asked, her voice casual but curious. I shrugged, kicking at a pile of leaves. "Used to. All the time. But now, I don't know. This town's growing on me." She grinned, squeezing my hand. "Good. Because I kinda like having you around." I stopped walking, turning to face her. The setting sun caught her eyes, making them glow like the ocean. "Riley," I said, my voice steady, "I don't know how to do thesis, but I want to try. I want to be someone you're proud of." Her expression softened and she pulled me close, her arms wrapping around me. "You already are," she said. "You're brave, Elena. Braver than you know." I buried my face in her shoulder, letting her words sink in. For so long I'd defined myself by my failures, my fears. But with Riley I saw a different version of myself, one who could love, who could be loved, who could build a life worth living. As we stood there, the world quiet around us, I thought about the choices that had brought me here. The necklace, the chase, the diner, the warehouse, all of it had led to this moment, to her. I'd spent years running from who I was, from who I could be. But now, with Riley's hand in mine, I wasn't running anymore. I was choosing her. Choosing us. And for the first time I knew I'd made the right choice. Months later I stood in front of a mirror in my apartment, adjusting a new jacket, one I'd bought with my own money, not stolen or borrowed. Riley was waiting outside, ready to drive us to a community event at the bookstore, where I'd been asked to read a poem I'd written. It was small, but it was mine, a piece of myself I was ready to share. As we drove through Crestwood streets, Riley reached for my hand, her thumb brushing over my knuckles. "You nervous?" she asked. "A little," I admitted. "But I'm ready." She smiled, her eyes warm. "That's my pretty girl." I laughed, the nickname no longer a spark but a steady flame, warming me from the inside. The road ahead wasn't perfect, there'd be challenges, doubts, moments when the past would try to pull me back. But with Riley beside me, I knew I could face it all. Because love, I'd learned, wasn't just about passion or promises. It was about showing up, choosing each other, and fighting for something better together. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.